All right, John, Monday, a rare Monday recording. Not a rare Monday appearance on the tube, but a rare Monday podcast recording. What's up, everybody?
Had to give our mothers some love, guy.
That's right.
Mother's love. Mother's Day. Day off for us men.
That's how you show the proper respect, John. That's how you show the proper respect.
Yes.
Hopefully, if you're in the Mother's Day business, you had a good Mother's Day. If not, well, we're here now, so it all works out.
Yep. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Belated Mother's Day. Well, mainly men listen to this, so /guy/younger adults. So tell your moms and your wives if they have children, happy Mother's Day for us.
It's going to sound like it's going to sound like it's an attempt to be rude, but it's not. We're thankful for all your moms.
Yeah, we are. Without them having you and deciding to, conceive on that given night, within the last 20 to 40 years.
But...
Yeah, maybe they didn't even, we wouldn't have you with your AirPods in or driving around your car. Listen to us. So thank you.
I know
you
my
guys, mothers.
I can say this definitively, John, from what I've been told. My appearance here was not so much a decision as it is a surprise. So
yeah,
it's good to be here.
I was definitely not a surprise. Told my brother was.
Oh, okay. Let's just say I was born 7 months after the wedding.
Yeah.
Oh!
Yeah, shit happens,
Was he premature? No.
I've been to a few pregnant weddings.
Yeah. When you knew?
Yeah, I mean, she was noticeably pregnant.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It happens.
It happens. It definitely happens. If you're watching the YouTube, we're glad you're here. Subscribe to our channel. If you haven't already, like this video. We appreciate that. If you're listening... Early sirens on the show today.
San Francisco's a war zone, guy.
Somebody the other day, sirens went by here, and somebody, for whatever reason, assumed it was you, and they said, John must live in the hood.
Yeah.
But in any event, if you're listening, we got the YouTube. If you're watching, we got the podcast. So, check it out.
Also, we do the ham mailbag every week. So you just go to Apple iTunes. You leave a little review. Really easy. Little 5-star, but leave a question. And then you get your question answered here on a Friday. On a YouTube, we do a live stream, and then we put it as a podcast for Saturday morning for, we just like to give the people who are doing some honeydews, some chores, maybe just a jog or a walk or whatever the hell you're doing on Saturday, something to listen to.
Yeah. Whatever you got.
Yeah.
When you're pretending to sleep in, but you're checking your phone.
Anything else?
I saw...
You already mentioned the DraftKings game this week?
I did not. No, mention that.
We got a DraftKings game out. You can find I think we both linked it on our Instagram. Rory McIlroy. Big Rory McIlroy. It's hard name to say. Rory McIlroy. Big win. And he's not playing. I looked at the list this week, but Texas, Dallas. I guess it's a home game. Bryson, he
Byron
gets to sleep
Nelson.
at home. Yeah. So
Pga
Championship next week.
This might be a
PGA
longer...
Championship next week.
Where is it this year? Shinnecock? Kiowa. There's some classic golf names. I'd say Shinnecock. The place up in New York, classic golf name.
Bethpage
Black, classic golf name. Yeah.
Olympics pretty good.
Olympics a great one.
Pebble Beach.
Yep, Pebble. I would say, but like Olympic and Pebble, maybe just because of where we live, I know where they are. There's some other ones where I don't actually know where Shinnecock is. There's one classic. What's one of the classic American Ryder Cups? I think maybe it's like in Minnesota or something like that.
Whistling Straits?
Yeah, Whistling Straits.
That's pretty good.
That's just what I've heard all the time. I never exactly know where it is. Maybe
Seminole's pretty good, where they play the Walker Cup.
Seminole's a good one. Yeah, that was fun to watch. I watched some of that yesterday morning.
That was pretty sweet. Brady's a member there.
Looks hard as hell.
Yeah, it doesn't look easy. It does not look easy. Did you know both teams got hit with Montezuma's /food poisoning, and they were shitting, puking their brain? Like everyone was sick, both sides.
I didn't know you could get hit with Montezuma in the United States.
Maybe it wasn't Montezuma, but it was something like, coming out of every end. So it was ugly.
Just something from the team meal, huh? From the box lunch,
it was the dude from, I watched the guy win from Ireland, and he claimed that it was the only match he's like, there was no way I wasn't at least going to get one match in, but I was shot the last couple days.
Oh, my God.
I guess Tyler Scrafacci, the dude that won the USAM, who played in the Masters, had a noticeable big Band-Aid where clearly they were pumping IVs into him. He didn't turn pro strictly for the Ryder Cup. So it was, the Walker Cup. So it was really the course is sweet.
I'll be honest, I was watching some of it yesterday. I didn't quite understand what I was watching. It's like 7.5 and 7, 8.5, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's
there's 15
basically
guys.
It's
It
the
doesn't add
Ryder
up.
Cup. It's the Ryder Cup with amateurs, kind of. I think is the idea.
Yeah, it's cool concept. I mean, Cole Hammer, the guy from Texas, I recognize him.
We had a 30-year-old guy on the American team.
Did we?
So it's not just college guys. Yes.
BYU?
It's amateurs. No,
Oh.
I think he's been out of college for a while. So yeah, shit happens. So DK game, get in it, and yeah, we'll have some betting content, I'm sure, next week for. I've already been circling, got some ideas for Kiowa.
Okay.
I mean, Rory, he won the PGA Championship there a decade ago.
Wow.
And his odds right now are 18-1. I would guess they would slowly work up this week.
Did you consider getting Bryson, before we dive into some football here, did you consider jumping on Bryson? As I saw somebody tweet so Bryson leaves in 78th place, lands, finds out he's made the cut, he's got to fly back. Somebody tweeted at one point he was 2,600 to 1.
Yeah,
I looked at 2,200 to 1, and he was already in like 6th place. I'm like, you can still get him at 2,200 to 1 in 6th place?
He was 6th place, but he was like 5 or 6 shots back. It was one of those. I contemplated. Yeah, I didn't. I did not had good luck. Yeah.
Not 2,200 to 1. I guess it would have been 22.
It would 22
to 1 plus 2,200.
Plus 2,200. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So a lot to dive into here on the pod today. We appreciate everybody hanging with us. So let's just dive in. It is a big week, something to look forward to this week, John, which is the NFL schedule release is on Wednesday night.
Oh, nothing like, because we already know the game, just knowing the dates of
the dates. But I would also, and where the prime time picks are. Like, I thought one of the fun things that
Monday night's now flexible though at the end of the season. I think I think week 12 to 17 starts this
11.
year.
Oh,
11.
week 12. NBC is 11. You saying Monday Night Football is maybe a week later? Or?
I think Monday Night Football is late in the season. That might kick in 22. I'm sure we'll get more information as this week goes on.
Okay, but you do get
again though, we give you credit for the game when we talk about it this week. That the flex is really more of a conversation in the season, right?
Yeah.
You get credit if you get multiple Sunday night games in the flex window when we're fired up.
Yeah, I mean that was I thought one of the fun things that Peter King wrote about, and yes, we will be doing a live show Wednesday night during the schedule release. I think it's going to end up being at 5 Pacific. But I think one of the fun things that Peter King wrote about in his FNIA was Thursday night Buck. What do they do with the Bucks? Here are the Bucks home games. The Bucks are going to be at home Thursday night to start the season. You're not going to give them the Giants, so it's probably going to end up being the Cowboys or the Bears? Was his guess? I think.
You don't think you could give them like
Buffalo, Cowboys or the Buffalo was his.
You
guess.
Couldn't give them like the Falcons or Sam Darnold. Is that?
I don't think that holds up like Buffalo or Dallas would.
Yeah, Dallas is a pretty easy one. But
even Buffalo's
my point is always like, I get it. You want to start with the bang, but if I gave you Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers against the Bucks at home Thursday night, is that getting less viewer? Obviously Dallas is so big, but it's opening night, the NFL. Isn't it kind of a BP fastball? Like it's just going to be so big no matter what. Who cares?
I think you just try to hit. I mean, you could argue that, but why not just try?
You like coming out the gate swinging.
Let's try and hit it. Not just hit a home run, but let's try and hit it 620 feet. But
NBC would be pissed because they usually like the Cowboys week 1 against the Giants.
That's true.
It feels like their go-to game.
Definitely does. But look, that's the beauty of this. So it does seem like, you and I talked about this the other day. I think Connor Orr ranked his divisions last week or Friday, had the NFC West number 1. The Athletic had a piece today, NFL Power Rankings. I don't know where the Cardinals were, but the other 3 teams in the division were all top 10. Like the margins in these divisions, particularly the NFC West, are going to be thin. The difference between some of these strength of schedule games the Niners are playing, that the Bengals as an example, which was their Week 17 game, like these could end up being the differences in an NFC West that I think at this point everyone's really bullish on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that on paper the NFC West is the best division in football, and it's weird because no one takes the Cardinals that seriously, but they play within the division very hard. One thing in the Athletic article that they pointed out that I would, if I'm doing power rankings, and listen, doing power rankings in May is just a fun exercise, but I would not have the Niners over Seattle. And they had the Rams basically went 6, 7, 8 in the league. Went Rams, Niners, Seattle. To me, like Seattle's earned it. Like the Niners would be eighth. I would flip flop those two, but who cares? Ultimately, this division is like the NFC North, or excuse me, the AFC North. If you were just looking at divisions in the league, would probably clearly be the second best division in football. But they have a team that no one takes seriously in the Bengals. The Niners do not, or excuse me, the NFC West does not have a throwaway team. Like I don't take the Cardinals that seriously as a playoff team, but if you tell me they went 8-9 or 9-8, like that is believable.
Right.
Like the Bengals don't have 8 wins in their franchise this year. Like to me, the Bengals could win 4 games, right? And that's when we talk schedule release. One thing that is going to separate the Niners versus these other teams, their 17th game is versus the AFC North, and the Niners, because they finished last season, drew the Bengals. So the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens, like those other 3 teams got to play those 3 teams. Those easily could be 3 losses, right? Especially because this year the AFC hosts the games. That's a huge swing game for the Niners, where they just got lucky that last year they finished in last. I mean, they didn't want to finish in last, but big picture, now that season's over, it has big ramifications. There's a big difference between playing, I guess the Steelers would. Yeah, the Browns were the 3rd place team, guy. So them and the Cardinals drew the Browns, and the Niners drew the fucking Bengals. Like that's a big swing, is it? I mean, the Browns could easily be a 12 or 13 win team.
Well, they were last year. I mean, they won 11.
Some people view the Browns as arguably the best roster in the league, top to bottom. Now, the quarterback, he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but their roster is loaded. See Myles Garrett. Were you watching the draft when he came out and did the pick?
Looked like he was wearing one of those fake suits with like fake muscles.
I mean, he's enormous. I saw someone tweet out a deal of him doing abs. You know, one of those things where people hold your feet and you just go up and down, but you stay parallel and you don't. He was able to do that. They're like 290. The guy's, I mean, he's a freak show.
One of the things, and I apologize, I don't know. Is it Sheil Kapadia for the Athletic?
Yeah.
One of the things written in the power rankings piece was Niners were the unhealthiest team in the league last year, right? In terms of injury luck, whatever you want to call it, the worst injury luck in the league, and the 3rd toughest schedule. And with that, they still were not, in the top 5 in terms of draft position. They still managed to. I mean, were they in playoff contention? No, but they kept the conversation alive for a good portion of the season. So I do understand, because I'm a little surprised when I see that. I'm with you on Seattle. I'm not surprised in the discussion of the divisions because, as you and I have talked about, the 4th place team in this division last year is better than everybody else's 4th place team. It's about the depth and the fact that you do have teams, Rams, Seahawks, and you would say, and certainly the Niners think this way, that do think about winning the Super Bowl, right? These are teams that every year. In terms of the power rankings, I do think a lot of that is about the schedule and it's about the injury history, because the Niners, to me, are not a team that can afford to be, forget about being the unluckiest. I don't think they can afford to be like 15th in injury luck and be a top 17.
They need a big swing back. They need a big swing back.
Yeah, like they were a couple years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, they were the healthiest team in the league. They were bad. They were the unhealthiest team in the league. I don't think they can be like 16th healthiest, though. Like, I think they've got to be like a top 10 health team, just because, again, their best players are the ones that got hurt. Their best players are the ones that they're going to rely on the most.
Yeah, I'd say that the reason they missed the playoffs last year, though, ultimately wasn't just overall health, right? It was quarterback position. And I think at the end of the day, the league is predicated on your quarterback position. So if they get stability at whether it's Jimmy plays all the games, whether Jimmy and Trey split half the games, however it works out, that it's just those 2 guys playing. If I tell you that only those 2 guys start at quarterback, I feel they have a good shot. If it gets down, like those 2 guys disappear and we got 3rd guys, right, that's a problem.
Nate Sudfeld?
Yeah, I mean, that was their issue last year. Like they were at the bottom of the barrel of their quarterback situation. And part of the reason that all these teams are going to have a high, I would say, strength of schedule is because the division, right? I mean, it's just the Cardinals won 8 games. The other 2 teams won double-digit games. Like, it's just you play in a division where you're not getting bottom feeders, right? And that's just like part of the reason. I bet if you looked at strength of schedule last year, the way it played out at the end of the year, I bet the NFC East was pretty skewed because their division was really shitty, right? So you just ended up playing a lot of 4 to 7 win teams. Where if you're the Niners, every team in your division all division games were either 8, 10, or 11, right? I mean, that's a lot of wins.
Yeah. Well, and
Because
also
think about their schedule. They ended up playing the AFC East, which had the Patriots, and obviously the Jets were terrible. Like they played some shitty teams. They played the NFC East as well, right?
they
So it's
play
really
the NFC East again this year.
Their division skewed up.
The other thing is like what looks like a break one day may not be a break another day, right? Atlanta finished in last place in its division. The Niners play Atlanta. Would you rather play Atlanta or Carolina? I think you could argue you'd rather play Carolina. I don't know. We'll see we don't know how good Atlanta's head coach is going to be, right? Christian McCaffrey, all that stuff.
Yeah,
but you might rather play Atlanta.
That's always a massive.
Excuse me.
When
Carolina.
you have a brand new coach, it's a massive question on what you're going to look like. Like you could be
But that's a great
rejuvenated,
example
or you could be a red flag.
But isn't that a great example of why Wednesday matters? Do you play that team week 2 or do you play that team week 13?
But sometimes, like
play the
week
Falcons?
2, they're hard. You know, sometimes it's like they just got continuity and they're still solid, and then they turn out to be shitty.
That's also possible.
It does go both ways. I mean, for as great as the schedule release is, and we're going to pimp the shit out of it, listen, I'm not trying to diminish what we're about to do, but it is a complete guessing game.
Well, it is. But again, would you rather play Trevor Lawrence? If I just said right now, would you rather play Trevor Lawrence week 2 or week 12? I think you'd pick week 2.
I would, but the schedule release does matter. Am I going to Jacksonville? Am I playing them at 10 a.m.? Or am I getting them off a short week? Are they coming to me?
Well,
like
I mean, you are going there. We know that. Yeah.
Oh, we know the home and away. You're right.
But we don't know the other stuff.
The times matter. The times matter. Where you're coming off matters. Typically, when you play teams like the Jags, the Falcons, and you are going there, those are 10 a.m. games, right? The Bengal game will be a 10 a.m. Bengal game, right?
Right.
They're not like, Bengal games at 4:30 Eastern time. Like, that ain't happening.
Nance really wanted to be there.
I went to a Bengal game one time as an advanced scout. Stadium sucks.
Crowd?
Pretty shitty. They were bad at the time. I think it was like Carson Palmer sit-out year. They were a disaster. It was ugly.
People, right now, go to wineaccess.com/ham to get 20% off. Our friends at wineaccess.com/ham, many of you have already used them, and you already know how great they are. All our listeners, you're getting hooked up with 20% off at wineaccess.com/ham. 20% off your first order.
Last night at Mother's Day, I was telling everyone about the deal. I said, you're a wine drinker,
Never stop selling.
wineaccess.com/ham. Never stop selling. You get 20% off. Here's the great thing. That you can send an impromptu present to somebody. Everyone likes wine. And you can get nice bottles of wine. I mean, they have $100, $200, $300 bottles of wine. They also have like $15, $20 bottle of wine. And here's the key. To make it on wineaccess.com/ham, onto Wine Access's website for them to sell, they only pick like 1 in every 18 bottles.
Correct.
So it's an exclusive club regardless of the price point.
Yep.
But then you factor in, you get a couple bottles with the 20% off. I mean, it's like legalized stealing. It's one of the best deals, I swear, that we've ever had on this pod.
It really is. I think 6 bottles or like around 120, you get free shipping as well, which is awesome. So then you're sending gifts that are you can send a great gift with the 20% off for $100. You can send multiple bottles of great wine. Team of wine experts. They've got a master of wine. They spent decades building relationships with not just the iconic wine producers, but the under the radar winemakers. Wine Access tastes over 20,000 bottles of wine a year. You are choosing from the best of the best. If you're not a wine expert like me, you can rest easy knowing that it all comes with a satisfaction guarantee, too. So if you don't like it, they'll replace the bottle. That's not going to happen. And every bottle comes with this awesome play sheet that tells you all about the wine, tells you what it pairs with, tells you about all the tannins, the acidities, the oak intensity, so you can learn as you go. And if you're a wine expert, then you'll see some of the best wine and best wine deals out there.
You can pick the regions. Sometimes when I'm out playing at like Chardonnay out there in Napa, and I'll look up and I'll see the private jets flying in. I'll be like, that guy owns a winery. Yeah. That guy. And who knows? Maybe we send a gift. Maybe you're sending a gift. Wineaccess.com/ham.
Maybe
20% off.
maybe that plane is just shipping Haberman and Middlecoff wine. Maybe that's what it's doing.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Trust us, you're going to love Wine Access too. Take advantage of this offer. WineAccess.com/ham. Do not forget WineAccess.com/ham. 20% off. Get it.
Do it. Do it. Do it.
All right. So one thing Peter King wrote about, John, is the trade with the Dolphins. The trade up to number 3 that the Niners made a lifetime ago. I remember where I was. Actually, I was on my way. I was about to leave for Napa when that trade happened on a Friday morning. If we look back at that video we made that day and my photos from Napa, I'm wearing the same shirt. So it was a celebratory weekend. But what did you take away from what Peter King wrote about that trade and ultimately how it went down for the Niners?
Well, I was fascinated with the original offer and was almost, I guess loosely agreed upon was 3 ones, pick 12 and 2 more ones. So a net of 2 first rounders. And then ultimately, as the process played out, that one thing that was big with the Dolphins, and it makes sense after watching the way they drafted, and clearly they knew going in, they were not going to draft an offensive lineman. They wanted an impact skill guy, I think is one thing Brian Flores mentioned. They wanted an impact skill guy. And you know what? This is where I give them credit. It turns out all the impact skill guys, Chase, Pitts, Waddle, Smith, all gone by 12. This is where we talk a lot. I talk a lot. I think it's the most important part of the draft. This is why you're reading this thing about Miami and just kind of following along. Now, the Tua thing will kind of make or break them. They're clearly pretty smart. Honestly, if Tua failed, I would still stick with those 2. They missed on a quarterback, but I think those fucking guys know what they're doing, right? You just listen to their logic, listen to the guys they're picking. They got a good idea of what's happening, guy.
They've done a lot to this point that we can judge on in terms of just how they value and what they value and whether they can play the market right now.
Yeah.
The stocks they pick still have to hit, but they've shown that they've made 28 trades in 28 months, as Peter King wrote. The Ravens in that same span made 14 trades. So twice as many trades, and the Ravens make a lot of trades.
To me, there's nothing else that an organization can do a better job of. When you see a guy who's a franchise player and you go, we're not going to pay them, and then you flip them like they did with Tunzel. Now, they didn't draft him, but they flipped him because their whole thing was we didn't feel we were never going to pay him. Boom, they got rid of him, and that's clearly reaped a lot of benefits. But ultimately, they came back, and I'll never forget Parag told us this when we interviewed him a couple years ago. And you kind of laugh at it, but I do think that the more and more, I notice with things we do when trying to get other people involved when it comes to advertisers sometimes, you can't always be trying, you do have to meet people in the middle. The best deals you're going to make are ideally somewhat where they both feel win-win. And they had basically accepted the offer, or at least it was in pencil. And then they kind of came back. John Lynch has watched his daughter play tennis. I mean, if you told me what are the chances she's a Division I tennis player, I'd probably lean closer to 100 than I would 80%.
Well, John, he threw hard. I bet she serves pretty hard.
Yeah, I bet she's probably pretty good. That they said we need an extra 3. And then you and me were talking before we jumped on, there is precedent with a trade from 6 to 3, and ultimately that's what Miami was going to do because they knew they were going to come back to get to 6. 6 to 3 cost the Jets 3 years ago or 4 years ago now with Sam Darnold 3 second-round picks. And I'd say, would you rather have 3 second-round picks or 1 first-round pick? Because that's ultimately what Miami was going to get sitting there at 6. And I don't think it's that crazy. 3 seconds, yeah. 3 seconds or 1-1 because ultimately Miami had to get rid of one of the ones to get back from 12 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, right? And again, if you told the Jags, we'll give you 3 2s for your 1, it's always different when you start attaching players to it. But in the context of this, right, if the Niners were sitting at 6, let's reverse the trade. Let's say instead of trading from 12 to 3, the Niners traded with the Eagles to go from 12 to 6 and then made another jump to go from 12 to 3, right?
Yeah.
Let's say they done it that way. I don't think the cost would have been any cheaper because we know Miami had to give up a 1. And so ultimately Miami only got 1-1 to go. Not only, they got a 1, and then they added 3, the tennis 3 that he got from John Lynch to go from 3 to 6.
So I think the deal was fair. And here's where I give the Niners credit because I think sometimes when you make a historic trade, you get defensive. It's a natural reaction. when the media is going to ask because the fans now are saying it, and it's just like the media loves Twitter, and that's where everyone freaks out. You overpaid. And I think the moment you tell someone they overpay, and this works as an umbrella with a free agent, and it works definitely with draft trades. People are natural, like, no, we just thought this was the value, or we believed in this. The Niners came out and said, we overpaid, essentially. Like, we knew we had to pay ultimately a premium to trade up early, and we were comfortable with that. Because to me, their deal, they were very comfortable doing, we'll flip-flop you 12 and 3, and we'll give you 2 additional ones. To me, I'm sure that internally, like, that's a shitload. But ultimately, they're asking for a 3. It'd be like you buying the equivalent of this trade just with the 2 ones. Like, we'd use some of these housing analogies in like the hundreds of thousands. It'd probably be the equivalent of like buying a $5 million house, and then they come back and be like, it's actually $5,125,000. So 5.125. Are you really going to bitch and moan over $125,000 when you're spending $5 million? You could, and some people do. And I think sometimes in negotiation, ego and pride. But if you just look at the big picture, like, fuck it, like, we're already spending $5 million, right? What's the extra $125,000? And ultimately, the way Kyle said it, or the way they justified, I guess, John telling Peter, is that we have the 3rd round pick from Robert Saleh, which I think you got to be careful with, because it's like, well, I won 7 hands of blackjack. Well, that is your money. Like, that is your pick now.
And it's kind of a 4th round pick, but.
Yeah, because it's the end of the round. So that probably made it a little easier, right?
It definitely made it easier.
It's in the comp round.
Yeah, I think part of it, too, is just, it's not just how you feel about it, it's how you can present it, right? And you can present it as, look, we had 2 3s, we had to trade one of them, fine. I think the way you price the house makes a lot of sense based on that you had this other 3rd round pick. But again, I go back to how much cheaper would the deal have been if they had done it? And it's not just if they had done it on draft day, how much cheaper would it have been? Let's say it was cheaper draft day, which, again, I'm not convinced it would have been. But let's say it was. What are you paying that 3rd round pick then for? You're paying that 3rd round pick for the 3 weeks that you get to evaluate Trey Lance the way you would want to evaluate Trey Lance, right? Spend the time with Trey Lance that you want to spend with Trey Lance and with Mac Jones and with Justin Fields. Like, they didn't get nothing by doing that deal early. That's the other thing I think we have to look at. They got something. They did the deal early for 2 reasons, and we only focus on one of the reasons. The reason we focus on is they did the deal early so nobody else could do the deal. That's what we always say. Oh, you did the deal 3 weeks early so no one else could have done that deal 2 weeks from now. But there's 2 reasons. The other reason is you paid for access to the prospects that you would not have felt comfortable fully accessing if you were still sitting there at 12 and letting everybody know what you were thinking, or at least giving people hints at what you were thinking. Like, they didn't get nothing by doing the deal early. So I look at that extra 3rd they had to pay. They didn't get nothing. Like, and what would have been worse? You hem and haw for 2 more weeks, and then you end up paying anyway, and now you lost 2 weeks of time. Like, if you had said throw in a 5th, you could have done the deal a month earlier. Hell, they might have done that, right? They didn't get nothing by doing it early.
And to me, if ultimately they paid a 3rd round pick to end up with Trey Lance and not Mac Jones, that's worth it alone.
Well, then there's that too.
Because if you told me that they wouldn't have the access to do all that stuff and still made the trade, maybe they do end up with Mac Jones that way. So I'd say the 3rd round pick to ensure Trey Lance, shit, I'll take it.
The other thing, don't you feel kind of good just reading that article if you're looking at it from a Niners perspective? That whole deal was a pretty high level deal. Like, the Dolphins aspect of it was high level. The Niners aspect of it had vision. The Eagles aspect of it had vision. Like, those are 3. I'll say this from afar. The Dolphins, I think, know what they're doing. Howie clearly, from a trade value standpoint, knows what he's doing. That whole thing came together maybe in part because it had 3 parts. From the Dolphins standpoint, it had 3 parts that all had a clear idea what they wanted to do. Like you said, what players they had targeted. Clearly, Miami had an idea what they wanted. I would imagine Philly had an idea what they wanted and didn't want. Philly wasn't about to draft a quarterback there.
I'll give you one. I think Philly has taken a little shit for using a 3rd round pick to go from 12 to 10 to get Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
And I think Howie would say this. We would have taken Devontae Smith or Waddle at 6 because obviously we wanted Pitts. We knew he wasn't going to be there. We were going to take a wide receiver, one of those 2 guys. We ended up getting one of those 2 guys, and we added a 1st round pick, right?
Yep.
So I think it worked out pretty well.
I would say in the retrospect, all 3 of those people in mind had a vision for who they wanted. They got who they wanted, and in the Dolphins and Eagles case, they got a little extra before they got who they wanted.
But I think part of this is understanding the value. This is we've talked about the Raiders not getting it way before the draft. Like these guys were having these visions in the middle of March, right? This wasn't like a week before once you've had all the pro days.
I think March 3rd was when wasn't March 3rd when they started talking?
Yeah, and clearly then the Dolphins, once they started working with the Niners, started calling Howie, right? So all these deals were kind of getting worked on. You have to have part of being a GM is not just like, once like a week before the draft, like I got an idea. You should have these fucking ideas in January and February. And then obviously the more information that comes in, but to me the best teams are so far ahead of the game on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have an idea of who's going to get slotted where. It's like the price points on the players. Now, you might be a little off, but it felt like most of these guys, all three teams, had a pretty good idea, right?
It definitely does. It definitely did. March 3rd. We're open. We'll listen. That's what Chris Greer told John Lynch. Underrated part of a GM is how you are on the phone.
I do think part of it, too, is just you get better and better with relationships with guys. Like, you really kind of know the way they tick. There is probably, one pushback has always been that GMs are a little more sacred, like sacred cows than coaches. They get run through, and a lot of GMs it's harder for owners to get rid of them because it's kind of easy having them. You do just end up staying in that position much longer than a coach, right? I bet if we just pulled up the last 10 years of the coaching picture, there is a ton of new faces. If we just did the GM picture, I would say that like 80% of the guys, even like the ball, like most of them are kind of the similar names, right?
Spend more time with the owner.
Just go around like the NFC West.
Yeah.
Snead, Keim, Schneider, Jerry, Spielman, Howie. Like you just go around the league. Gettleman's been a GM for the last decade.
Yeah, Jerry Jones been at it for a while.
This was one of the first years there were like 3 or 4 GM openings. For the most part, most guys stay just in their spot for a long time. Like Dimitrov had the job for 15 years.
Yeah, and some of these were simultaneous, right? Atlanta and Detroit were both at the same time.
You're saying when they blew? Oh, you're saying with the head coach.
I'm saying they hired both together. I guess sometimes that happens anyway, but
it's becoming a little rarer though. It's becoming like less. Felt like that used to happen. They were on the same timeline. Now a lot of GMs get like 2 or 3 coaching hires.
Yeah, who's got personnel power in Atlanta? The GM, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
Not
he
Arthur
had
Blank.
like
he hired Arthur Blank.
Who?
The GM in Atlanta hired Arthur Blank. Not Arthur Blank. Sorry, Arthur Smith. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think Arthur Smith had so much juice. I'm not. That's a great question. I'm not super locked in with the hierarchy.
Detroit feels like the GM is in charge there. Hired Dan Campbell.
Well, Albert Breer wrote that it was kind of like a mutual hire. Like they were both just hired and they hadn't known each other. So I would imagine the GM has the personnel power on draft day and the coach has the power during the season.
Yeah.
Type. Those are probably the deals in those two places.
Who else? Arizona could be.
Yeah, I guess the Jets, he's been there now for 2 years,
right.
The GM. Feels like Jacksonville got a new GM, right? I mean, Balky and a new coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Balky. Was the interim, though, wasn't
he? Yeah.
All right. Okay, so one of our favorites, John, Mike Sando of The Athletic, wrote a piece. Was this Friday? I think it came out. It was great weekend reading. I read it on Saturday. Execs, what are they saying? What are they saying about drafts? What do they say about your draft? So we went through and we pulled all the quotes that Mike Sando got from anonymous execs, and we're just going to rattle through them and kind of analyze what we think makes sense, what doesn't make sense. I think I pulled these in order of the article. All right. So here we go. First up, this is exec. I want like specific. I love when they say like an NFC exec. To show that they're not making the guy up, but it gives me no context for anything, An NFC East exec. It's like, ooh, who could it be? The guy in charge of tickets in New York? So this is what he says. You can't pick the Alabama guy, Mac Jones, and have him turn out to be Daniel Jones. This is about the Niners draft. You have to pick the guy that looks the part and has big-time upside. Lance is starting exactly where the Buffalo guy started. High grit, high want to, works at it, loves the game, all those things that make you feel good about developing him. What do I think about the exec that calls Josh Allen the Buffalo guy? That's the first thing we address here.
I just think, that's just kind of how they talk. I mean, he could have just said Josh Allen, but it could be, someone in the division doesn't want to give Josh Allen too much credit, to me, I just agree with the original, like the first part of the deal. You could not take Mac Jones. And back to talking about the value, if it cost a 3rd round pick, if that was extra throw in just to get a peace of mind that led them to Trey Lance, that was worth it alone. But this is what we said the whole time, where it had to be Lance or Fields. You had to take a swing for the fences. You just had to. And it would have been there would have been a negativity to me just around every time that we went live, every time that you run into a Niner fan. It would not have felt the same. And I'm not saying Trey Lance, like most people don't even know, right? It's just a great part of anything. I mean, hope's a powerful emotion because you're just hoping. And that's what I think it is. But it's not because people feel great. People feel great that it ultimately right now that it was not Mac Jones more than they know Trey Lance, because they don't. No, none of us. You and I watch more football probably than like 98% of people. And I never watched Trey Lance throw one pass live, right?
I think higher than 98% of people, but yeah, I agree.
It's just so part of it was just the anti-Mac.
1%ers here.
You could not draft Mac Jones. And I think that's what the league thought. That's what we thought. It was one of those like kind of universally agreed upon, like they can't really do this, can they? When everyone kept saying it, like they're really not going to do this. They didn't.
I think from people who follow the Niners, it was partly was like, don't make me, like from fans who really like their coach, don't make me hate my coach. Kyle, don't make me hate you. From the rest of the league, it wasn't about that. It was more about, are they really going to misjudge just the value here of being at number 3 based on a prospect? And, Daniel Jones, like, he
went 6th.
I mean, it felt kind of crazy when they did it. And right now, it doesn't feel like it's going in a good direction. But to me, it's playing out the way it usually plays out with that guy, and that's not the way the Niners could have afforded to have it play out.
No. Now, I think the pushback would be, if Daniel had been drafted by Kyle, I bet he's way better, just because he does have some. It looks really weird in New York at times. He has more talent than I think you're giving him credit for.
Yeah,
he's more physically gifted than Mac Jones. It sounds crazy, but he just is.
A former GM said this. Former GM? Wait, he's got to be anonymous as a former GM? Was he like, put my name on it? And Sando's like, no, this is only anonymous people. I would bet on Trey Lance as a former GM. I don't know how fast it's going to happen. A high character guy with talent going to an excellent system and an excellent coach. Then I'll read you. This is 2 quotes in one. Another evaluator, maybe a scout, maybe a Middlecoff out there, said the things to fix with Lance are easier than the things to fix with Fields. Most of that has to do with instincts, the quickness, the consistency of their reaction. So 2 guys one guy who values Fields below Lance, and another guy who just says, I'm betting on Trey Lance.
Yeah, I mean, part of when the people you bet on in football, I think pretty consistently are guys with a ton of physical, talent, great athletic attributes, whether that's, if you're a wide receiver, size and speed, whether that's a quarterback, size and arm strength and athleticism, that are super high character guys. Like that to me seems like an easy bet. That's why I think so many people are bullish on him, even though his resume is really small. There's not much to go off of, but they're going super high character guy with super great gifts. That's what more do you want to bet on? Because people often bet on super great gifts, average to below character. Those guys are always drafted in the top 10. The freaks, right? And those are hit or misses. But I think you do feel pretty good about betting on the high character.
When his skills. The question is not his talent level. The question is, can it translate to good quarterback play in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
And you have that question about literally every guy you draft anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The guys who have put 4 years on tape, we have that question about, right? Justin Fields put great stuff on tape at Ohio State. And it's a legitimate question to say, is he a great NFL quarterback? The second quote here to me, it would not surprise me, John, if we had all 32 boards, if half of them or more than half of them had Trey Lance higher than Justin Fields.
I think that's fair. I think Trey Lance was very, very highly thought of. And part of that, right or wrong, is just based on the lack of information.
That's right.
I have less information to go off of. I have a greater unknown. I have a greater, like, at least even though Justin Fields ultimately only started 2 years, I think it was 22 total games, and Trey ended up starting 17. I think him and Mac Jones started the same amount. When I'm watching Justin Fields, he is playing Michigan, Northwestern, Wisconsin. Like, I am taking a huge guess on the level of competition. Like, it's a dramatic difference, right?
Shots fired at Dan Hawkins.
Dramatic difference. The Big 12, brother.
This is an exec. The only strange thing to me about the Niners is if you're keeping Garoppolo and if you're paying $25 million, you lose whatever benefit there is of having a quarterback on a rookie contract. I would have traded Garoppolo and just cleared the books, saved the money, gone into free agency with more resources. See, this comment to me the timeline of it all doesn't make sense. I don't think you can, until you know you're drafting.
Not an educated comment.
And then the other part of it is you don't lose the benefit. The benefit will exist in 2022 if Trey Lance is good enough to move on from Jimmy.
Yeah, but I think his point is, like, right now, you could just trade Jimmy Garoppolo or cut him and have the space and go trade for Julio Jones. Like, it is a lot of space. I think he's a little high on his number. I think it's closer to 20 than 25. But the point remains, like, it is a large chunk of change, right? $20+ million on a cap that went down is large. I don't think you could have made it March 15th without knowing they hadn't made the trade yet. You could justify it now. Like, could he be a post-June 1 cut? I'm just saying, like, you would it wouldn't make any sense if you didn't have another move lined up. But to me, if, like, you were ready to make another move to get Julio Jones, I'm just use him because he's a $20 million guy. Now, would I want to trade a second or third round pick for a guy that's 32 years old? And, you know, is it just safer to keep Jimmy? Like, there is a cost-benefit analysis to all this.
Yes, it is. One more exec. San Francisco is one of those teams that did a great job creating the narrative. They get treated kindly. Other teams with better records over the past 4 years get crushed. Look at some of their early picks. What makes you think Trey Lance is the right pick if you follow the record of their early picks? I think our buddy Chris Biederman wrote on maybe the week before the draft that I think the Niners, you know, the old Ron Wolf thing, which I've quoted before, you hitting 300 or 333, whatever. I think Ron Wolf hit 300 draft picks that ended up as starters. The Niners are like 285 coming into this draft, right? So they have missed. There's no doubt, and they've had some high profile misses. Now they've had some major hits too, but it is interesting to see a little somebody who feels like they're not getting criticized enough.
I do feel I think there's some validity to this. There's some jealousy within the league on how they get treated with the 24/7 kind of reach around, and how I know Kyle's been anointed, and just did people just love Kyle and John? And just based on their resume, they've had one season. Now, here's my pushback. Their one good season wasn't like they hosted a wild card game. I mean, they made the fucking Super Bowl.
Right.
They beat the shit out of everybody. They had the number 1 seed. Like, their 1 year was badass. And then, actually, if you really watched 20, it was pretty impressive, too. Like, I agree, like, you want to nitpick 17 and 18. It had some holes, some issues. There were some problems. There was a lot of unknown. He probably got anointed a little higher than they should have. But I'd say 19 and 20 were pretty impressive.
Here's what I say about this all the time. Whatever. You want to nitpick, do they get too much credit? Would you, if everybody's coach became available, how high would Kyle Shanahan go? I think he'd go really high. I think he'd be like one of the first 5 coaches taken. So whatever, like, say he gets too much credit, whatever. I think he'd get, that's how I talk about it. That's why I talk about him. However it is, that to me is the background. Now, he goes 2 more years, and he's not making the playoffs, and Trey Lance isn't good, and okay, that things change. But I think he does more with less.
And this is the type of move where it's going to be like, there's going to be eventually a concrete opinion, like it worked or it's not going well.
Yeah.
Right. Once you get, now it takes time. Like, we're just going to naturally react, and every human will, game to game, season to season. But you'll have 2 or 3 years looking back and be like, whoa, that didn't go well. Or, wow, that went pretty well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not be like, it's kind of middle of the road. Just given what you give up.
Right.
Yeah. The expectations are going to be out. They already are. I mean, we're just talking about people universally are like, Niners are top 10 team. Niners are top 10 team.
I know.
And part of that, though, is when they had the roster, they were really good. And then last year, all the guys got hurt. And then they bring the majority of these guys back. Now, we can nitpick. I don't think they're as good, the roster, as of 19, but they're definitely pretty good. Like, they should be a playoff team. And that's where the expectations this year. But the weird part is, what if Jimmy's starting the majority of the games they make the playoffs? Like, we won't really know much about Trey Lance.
No, I know. Well, here's the last one from Sando. An exec says, Trey Lance is a ball of clay, and the only thing is whether he can process at the next level because he just doesn't have the experience. But all the talent's there. The mental part seems to be there. The personality seems to be there. All the pieces are there. He is developmental, so it makes sense to keep Jimmy for now. Pretty straightforward. We don't need to spend a ton of time on that, but I think that, to me, is the reason that's...
Was that John Lynch?
It just said an exec. Could have been John Schneider. We assume, I love when they always say rival exec. It's like, well, was it rival exec or just somebody from like the Colts?
Yeah.
Oh, rival exec. Just Rams or Seahawks.
But could a rival exec be just another team in the NFC that like says we're a good team too?
Yeah, that one didn't said exactly. Well, are you really a rival or? Rival is like, I think the reason you say rival is like this person should hate him, but he has begrudging respect.
Yeah.
I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
All right, John, before we move on, let's tell the people about netsuite.com. Go to netsuite.com/ham, netsuite.com/ham. If you're still running your business on QuickBooks, you're out of your mind. You're running in quicksand. The bigger your company grows, the faster you sink with outdated software that just can't keep up.
Yep, guy. NetSuite helps you automate your key business processes and close your books in a fraction of the time. Think days, not weeks. 93% of surveyed organizations increase visibility and control over their business since making the switch from QuickBooks to NetSuite. Right now, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program only for those ready to graduate from QuickBooks. Like I said, you don't want to be stuck in quicksand. Get with the times, people. Get with the times.
Head to netsuite.com/ham. That's special financing for you graduates at netsuite.com/ham. That's netsuite.com/ham. Stop wasting your time spending your days dealing with manual processes, system delays, and then a system delay, and then another system delay, scrambling to get the numbers you need. Get on solid ground. netsuite.com/ham. That's netsuite.com/ham.
Do it.
All right. Peter King. How about this? I thought this was a fun thing to dive into, and we can update this as the year goes along. Where did I put this? Here we go. Peter King had this in his in one of his articles, or in his article this morning. He said, I think the over-under on Jimmy Garoppolo starting 2021 is 10 games. So he thinks Jimmy will start more than 10 games. Give me the over. Over-under 10 starts for Jimmy Garoppolo. My gut reaction, John, was under. I mean, every time Kyle Shanahan talks about him, he says, Jimmy's only started one full season, really, when you think about it. And he's right.
He's not lying.
He's 1,000% right. So how can I bet on this guy on the over? And I think there's a chance Trey Lance is ready faster than we think.
Yeah, to me, there's just no way you could bet on the over, given that he's been in the league since 2014. Now, granted, he sat behind Brady, but he's had one season where he started more than 10 games, and that was the Super Bowl year. Every other game, every other season, even the trade year, he started the last 5 games. Next year, he started 3 games. He tears ACL. Then he had a Super Bowl year. The last year, he had 17 million injuries. Now, there is a path if he stays healthy, which would clearly be a Jimmy Garoppolo outlier season. And I was someone who was adamant he was gone. Now, I also assumed the whole time they were taking Justin Fields, not Mac Jones, but also even factored in if they take Mac Jones. If they took Justin Fields or they took Mac Jones, I do think it would have been harder to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, obviously, if they had Mac Jones, what do the Patriots have? And it would have made more sense. Like, Patriots ain't trading for Jimmy when they have Mac Jones. But I just think it would have been very difficult for those two guys not to be the starter. It would have been hard for the fan base to watch. It's a kind of an easy sell for a guy that no one has even seen. So it's like, oh, he's a project. You just say that, everyone agrees. It's like, I bet he is. Right? It's just kind of universally agreed upon. Total project.
That Mel Kiper told us on this podcast.
Yeah, and he is. I mean, in the history of the league, like a guy like him is always sitting for years. If they are playing well and Jimmy is in there, like I just see I have a hard time seeing them do like what Brian Flores did last year with Tua, right? Because could you see them just benching Jimmy if they're winning now? And especially if Jimmy remember Fitz was playing well.
Yeah, I'm
right?
looking at Jimmy as the Fitz in this conversation.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
But
you're saying if Jimmy's playing like Fitz, yeah, but then they went back to Fitz.
I know, but they just benched Fitz. And remember, Fitz was like, I think went on a show or whatever, maybe just came out and was like, yeah, I was devastated. It was hard. Now, I'm not saying that was unique. He's a bridge quarterback. But part of it, like, they were winning. Remember, Fitz came to the fucking San Francisco and looked like Dan Marino.
I do remember.
He was just good. He was clearly the best quarterback.
I would be surprised to see that. But part of that is like, well, it's how
just an all-out quarterback switch mid-season when they were like 8-2.
Well, part of what made it crazy is that Tua came in and then Tua didn't look great. I think part of the reason you do that, you think, like if you told me right now Kyle Shanahan does that week 7, let's just make an arbitrary. I'd go,
but you know, factor in they're 6-1 or something.
Yeah, I'd go, well, Trey Lance must be looking incredible, right? If Trey Lance then rolled out and was 80 yards or 93 yards passing in his first game, I'd go.
But even take it back a step. Can you envision if they're 7-2, like mid-season or whatever? I guess the midpoint is now 8-9 games. Could you envision them doing something like that if it was going really well? I have a hard time.
It'd be harder. I mean, I think Jimmy's probably in a different place
factoring
than
Jimmy playing well, not like the team doing well and Jimmy being so-so.
Yeah, I think part of it, right, is Garoppolo's in a different place than Fitzpatrick. Like we have plenty of Fitzpatrick data, right, to know where the ceiling is and kind of what he is. Kyle could justify Jimmy. This is only the second time I've ever gotten Jimmy like this, and the last time I got him like this, we went to the Super Bowl. Ryan Fitzpatrick's never started 16 games, and his team went to the Super Bowl, right, based on, in part, the way he was playing. So you're right. That is different. It would make it harder to envision them doing that. To me, the other difference, though, is I don't think they would do it. It felt like the Dolphins did it as like a let's see what we got here.
Because they were kind of found money on being that good.
And maybe
they didn't think they were going to be.
Maybe they were going to start Tua from the get-go, and he wasn't physically ready to do it.
Well, that's part of it. He was injured. I do think you could also question, if you just Fitz would have been your starter the whole year, maybe you end up with 11 wins. You're in the playoffs. Because remember, part of them, they controlled their own destiny, and that they stumbled down the stretch a little bit because Tua wasn't as good.
I remember part of our conversation at the time, which was, are you going to pull an Arizona Cardinals and trade your first-round pick to draft another quarterback in the first round because you have Houston's pick, and Houston's bad. So you're going to have the chance to replace Tua, but you can't go through the whole season without knowing if Tua's good enough or not, right? I think that was part of what I thought and what we talked about. I don't know if
there were more variables at play. It was a unique situation.
But to answer your original question, you're right. It would be surprising if the Niners are 6-1 and they replace Jimmy Garoppolo with Trey Lance. I couldn't see them doing that.
Yeah. The only way I could see is if someone was injured and they traded him.
Oh, if they like Trey's ready, Jimmy's probably a little better right now, but Trey's ready, and we can get a second round
Jimmy was playing
pick.
Well, and even if they get like a third, and they were just like,
let's do it back for Trey.
Yeah, something like that.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
I would take the under, but I can see a scenario where he hits the over. Now, obviously, like it would be an outlier health, like he gets hurt. That's part of it. Because if they're playing well and he's starting, I just think they're just going to keep going with it. Like you said, part of it is someone DM'd me this a while back. Like you envision a scenario where Trey Lance is just lighting it up in practice and the media is talking about it. I'm like, well, the thing that you don't realize, and most people wouldn't unless you're on our side, once the season starts, like training camp practices, not before Corona, you could just go watch the whole thing. That is not how the season is. Like Matt Mayoko gets 15 minutes of practice. Him, Barrows, and all those guys. They do not get to watch the entire practice during the season. You don't know. The only people that knew Mahomes was killing it were like Andy and Veach and the team. Like the media wasn't out there being like, how about the
Chiefs.com reporter? What do they do with that person? Does that person stay out there? Or does that person?
It probably depends how well he's liked by the group. It's probably a slippery slope. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's the takes in training camp when everyone just feels like we know what's going on. That is not the way the season is.
And the NFL, and there's less reps for that guy too, even if everybody was out there, right?
Yeah, but he could even be like, part of it was like Mahomes was running the scout team and just destroying their defense. Now, remember back then their defense wasn't as good as it's become, but the point is it was clear, holy shit.
Yeah. And he didn't start until week 17.
I wonder if you're Roger, like, would, add 15 minutes and give the media 30 minutes just to create a little more buzz, maybe get a couple videos. I don't think it's crazy. Now, I think it's where the teams really push back on, like, the training
Roger
camp.
Would be like, you have to do 11 on 11 live for 15 minutes in front of the media.
Yeah, part of training camp, right, is just you're not doing schemes. You're just running your play. You're just doing generic stuff. I mean, in the season, you're implementing, like, double passes on the punt and stuff. Right. It's like, whoa, you should have seen this shit they ran.
Yeah.
Belichick's like, doot, doot, doot.
It's not in your best interest, but
no. It's worked. I'd say the NFL is working fine with their setup.
Look, I'll tell you this. If Trey Lance is in practice after everyone's left and he looks better than Jimmy, word will get out.
Yes.
Somebody will say something to somebody.
One big difference, too, is they loved Alex Smith, and they were not going to try to discredit Alex Smith. Even though, like, I think there were rumblings like this kid's pretty special, but they were not trying to be like, he's just going to kick him to the curb. I don't know if the Niners will feel as obligated with Jimmy.
They may not, but there still is the trade value that you're talking about.
Yeah, but if his play is speaking for itself, why does it matter?
Well, you don't want to give any hint that, like, we're looking for a reason to just kind of,
yeah, that's probably true.
But to your point, your actions might just speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Speaking of actions speaking for themselves, a lot's been made of Justin Fields' draft video when he was on the phone with your boy Matt Nagy, who could not have been more thrilled to draft Justin Fields. I don't blame him. You sent me the video last night. When did this video come out? Has it been out for a few days or?
I saw it on the meme, so
I thought it was going to be a big joke. You sent me a meme. I'm like, this is going to be funny.
I would imagine it got out in the next 24 hours. I mean, clearly they were taping at Justin Fields' house.
And then it wasn't actually a joke. It was just Justin Fields on the phone.
Now, if Justin Fields was at the draft, he would have been the number one camera guy past like pick 5, right?
Over Mac Jones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both those two guys. I mean, Mac they kept going to him. Part of it, his teammates kept getting drafted. But you know what I'm saying? Like, he was, for a large period of time, where did I hear this? So I was listening to something on a podcast, and like the Jags were seriously, like the two guys that they honed in on were Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence.
Trent Dilfer said that to Russillo.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay. And guess who you're right, that is where I heard it. You know who Trent Dilfer's like best friend is? Trent Baalke. So when he's saying that, he's saying that with confidence of like they were taking that shit seriously. I've heard, and listen, whether it's true or not, you've heard something different. There's a lot of stuff out there. I do think the Niners were really interested in Justin Fields, and he grew on him. I'm just putting myself in Justin Fields' perspective, and with his agent, going 11 probably felt like a dramatic tumble for the kid, right? He had to go into draft night thinking, I'm a top 5 pick, right, in some form or fashion, whether it be a trade or whatever. So when you get to like 8, 9, it's got to just be kind of rattling.
Let me say this first before I answer that. I do think the reaction we saw from him was understandable. I don't think it had to do with the Bears. I think it had to do with this. The fact that he thought he was going to go earlier than he did. So I'm not watching that going like, oh, Nagy's getting this guy, doesn't want to be there. For me, the question.
I'll give you just a basic one if you're him. Trey Lance went over me.
Exactly what I'm getting at. Like, well, 2 parts. One, I just had a pro day where it was basically for the Niners. Right?
Yeah. It was.
I had a pro day for the Niners, and they made me feel I came out of it thinking, like, they like me. So then they said no. And not only did they say no, they drafted the guy from North Dakota State.
Yeah.
And then Atlanta, whose quarterback is like 2 years max away from being done there.
Where I'm from,
they said nah. And then the Panthers picked Sam Darnold over me. And we just start going down the list of the other teams there.
The Broncos don't have a quarterback.
The Broncos don't have a quarterback.
And he's like, no, we'll take a corner. You know how Patrick Surtain in NFL circles is described? He's like a stand-up double. No one's like, this guy's the next Jalen Ramsey. He's like, no, he's just a good player. They wanted to sell. Albert Brewer described him as a fairway finder. They just wanted to hit the fairway. It's like,
It's a little
you're
high
driving
for
the
a
top
fairway
10. You're hitting
finder.
a fairway. I know. So if you're Justin Fields, you're like, they're doing fairway finders over me? What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't blame. I look.
You're pulling out the 2-iron? I'm a driver.
I don't blame
think he
him.
was really rattled.
The question.
Honestly, guy, I truly believe this. In recent memory, he's got to be in the quarterback influx, just his pure physical attributes. It's pretty crazy that he was there at 11 just the last 3 or 4 years where guys 5-star, produces, 4.40, huge arm, accurate, Ohio State, like never been in trouble or anything. Like the worst thing I've heard is like, he's got a little 5-star vibe to him. Like a lot of guys do. Like that's not that bad.
Yeah.
Went 11. In his mind, he had to be like, I'm better. We could even Zach Wilson. You think Zach Wilson's a better quarterback than me? Trevor Lawrence, we were 1-2. Like Zach Wilson, you see some of the memes about him. Like he looked a little overwhelmed the whole night. Just some of it just around the other guys. Now he's a baby face, but still, like I do understand if Justin Fields' camp is like, we got fucked. It's hard to say that, but.
Well, maybe used though, because you think the Niners were more into him than I do, but maybe it feels like we got a little used here, right? I would understand that feeling that way, even if you weren't actually. I would understand feeling
you're saying that they feel they got used as a pawn in this whole thing.
Yeah, that's certainly possible, depending on. But it might be as simple as I thought they were going to take me and they didn't, and that's where I wanted to go, and I was going to go 3. When I came out and signed, I was the number 1 quarterback. Trey Lance was 49th. I'd never heard of Trey Lance when I signed, right? That might be what Justin Fields is thinking. I don't know. But at the end of the day, maybe this is my ultimate point on this. Maybe this turns out to be good for Chicago. Like, did they get a Justin Fields? And maybe Justin Fields, wherever he went, was going to work just as hard as he could possibly work. But I've heard enough players talk about where they got drafted motivating them that maybe getting drafted 11th. And one man's 199th is another man's 11th, by the way.
Yeah.
He could be just as devastated at 11 as Brady was at 199. Maybe
Rodgers 24 was their 199.
Yeah.
It's all relative to that year.
Maybe this is his fuel.
Part of like Mitch Trubisky's like, I just went 2.
What? Yeah, winning.
Yeah.
So maybe this is Justin Fields' fuel. I would guess that when Justin Fields shows up, I had the list here. When do rookie OTAs? Turns out OTAs are going to happen, John.
Well, I mean, they got canceled, but it turns out they didn't get canceled because none of the players listened. Even though Tom Brady, you see, got on the call last week and told them all we're getting screwed. It's like, Tom, this isn't about you. It's about all just the working class people. I think all the rookie OTAs are this weekend. There were 3 last weekend, and theirs are this weekend.
The Bears start the 25th. No, that's sorry. That's not. Bears is the 14th rookie minicamp.
Gotcha.
I think the Niners is Friday. What day is the 14th? 10th, 11th, 12th?
Yeah.
13th. That's Friday. Yeah. So I would imagine the Justin Fields that walks into the Bears facility is a Justin Fields who's pretty fired up to be a Bear, ready to go to work. Now he's gonna have to earn that job. He does it. I mean, Andy Dalton's a real NFL quarterback, but I would imagine what we saw was just about everything we just talked about, not about. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to play for Matt Nagy. I don't think it was about that. Would you rather play for Arthur Smith? I mean, you would based on where it is, but he didn't go to. He went to the Bears.
Yeah, but you never know. To him, that might not mean that much. Right, that is something you always got to put in the back.
It might not, but here's the thing. I think even history aside, like you end up when you play for the Bears, you end up getting treated differently than about 20 other places get treated.
Yeah, it's a massive franchise. For as shitty as that day probably was to him, it has an opportunity to work out really, really well. Because here's the other thing: the bar is really low. I don't know for Bears quarterbacks, so it's like I told this to someone with the Bears. I just believe this, and I've seen it. I saw it with Jimmy. I think you see it with a lot of rookies that just teams, franchises when they're desperate. I think you saw it a little with Baker in Cleveland. When we want it to work, a fan, someone in that city, with whoever it is, if you're a Browns fan, like Baker is supposed to save your franchise. And I'd say with Justin Fields even more, not only save your franchise, but you kind of fell into it. Like Baker, you did draft him number 1 overall, so it's probably held to a higher standard, but I think the whole town is going to try to lift him up. Like they want it to work. They're going to have his back even if like he has a rough rookie year, because they're going to feel lucky to have him. And I think your landing spot with the fan base sometimes can be like, I actually think Zach Wilson's kind of going at a weird time because he's taken over for another younger guy who wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. It's not as easy of a landing spot as you'd think.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier when it's just been really shitty. Like Mac Jones, actually, he's not filling Brady's shadow because they had the year. Even Cam was pretty terrible. They're like just kind of open to like, okay, just give us normal quarterback play again.
Also, with Fields, like no one's wondering what does this guy look like. They just want to know what he looks like as an NFL quarterback. To your point on comparing him to Wilson, Jets fans, part of watching him is like, is this guy going to look like an NFL quarterback the first time we see him in a preseason game, or is he going to look like he doesn't belong? Right? There's this whole other big question with them. I'm with you. I am with you. Bears fans are right now feel thrilled to have him. They're going to go. I don't want to say easy, but plus they're all rooting for him to beat out Andy Dalton. Like he's the good guy in this situation, no matter how it plays out.
Well, there's another curveball guy that if Rodgers somehow they can't work it out and is traded, and Fields can have a good rookie season and the Bears can make the playoffs, all of a sudden, like he could have like a legendary franchise rookie season. Like we got our rookie quarterback, Rodgers is out, the guy that we could never beat, and all of a sudden we're the fucking toast of the town or toast of the division. It could just be one of those like bang, bang, booms. Now you need Rodgers to go before we can talk about that. And I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, Peter King wrote he thinks it's going to be at least a couple of weeks before anything takes place, but who knows? Maybe it feels longer than that. A couple other things, John. Tim Tebow's back in the league.
I saw that.
Same with the Jags. Bob Baffert's horse. Oh, you got to throw
really quick on Tebow. Has not played in 8 years in the league. It's a long time.
But he's been playing double-A, single, high-A baseball. 8 years is pretty crazy.
It's a long time. Now, he does eat avocados. He doesn't dip chips. He uses a spoon. Like, he's a health freak. So,
and doing a position switch.
Yeah, to me, my biggest question, as just a former guy that used to beat the bushes, would be one, just blocking. Like, is he going to be able to block? Like,
I want to.
I tweeted this out. Honestly, guy, if he makes the team, like legitimately makes the team, it might be his greatest accomplishment.
His.
Post Florida.
More impressive than Jared Hayne making the 49ers?
I'm talking Tebow.
I'm just asking now. I'm just throwing out Jared Hayne.
Yeah.
Whose name?
Yeah, that one's tough. This guy fucking switched positions at 33? That means he could catch, like, the pushback would be, why didn't you try this years ago?
Wanted to try baseball.
They are going to be, you always hear this, and I always just nod my head, but like when someone that lives down in the area, like, college is king down here. When you like live in Alabama, New Orleans, Florida, Atlanta, they always say that about the NFL team. Like what Peyton did and Breeze did, making an impact in a college area, it's been incredible. It's been incredible. Even like Matt Ryan got a little bit of credit. Like he's made the Falcons important down in college country. Guy, if Tebow makes the team, you got Tebow blocking, you got Trevor Lawrence and ETN, and they've been an enormous factor the last 3 years at Clemson right there, who's a powerhouse. And you got Urban roaming the sideline. Like that will be the biggest just casual college guy draw to the Jags. They have an opportunity. Tebow's got to be good, but if he can be good enough just to make the team, they're going to have some eyeballs down in that region. I don't know, like you and me might not care that much for like a 5-6 team.
No, I care.
Yeah, I'll pay attention. But you agree though? Like,
absolutely.
Don't you think that place is going to be kind of viewed as like the SEC on steroids?
Well, you'd have two of the largest star quarterbacks of the last 20. I mean, ever. Certainly Tebow. Trevor Lawrence. I don't think became like a Reggie
he was like a star
Bush.
more for NFL stuff than he was for college.
Yeah,
the division sucked. Tebow probably the biggest college guy of the last 20 years. I think. Right.
Yeah, Tebow or Reggie.
Yeah.
Bob Baffert's horse. Did you hear about this one? Kentucky Derby.
Does the horse need to answer for his sins?
Did you hear the excuse?
I thought Baffert said we never gave it to him.
What they're claiming is that one of the guys who takes care of the horse was not feeling good, drank a lot of cough medicine, peed on the hay in the horse's stall. The horse ate the hay, and this chemical was in the cough medicine.
That's got to be one of the most ridiculous excuses.
Is that one of the best? I don't think I've ever like this is better than any baseball player. Tony Bosch excuse.
Hasn't Bob Baffert's horses been caught for this before? Because Churchill Downs banned him.
I don't know if he's caught for this specific steroid, but yes, there's been some smoke around Bob Baffert.
What do you think? And I don't know, like, did you see that the books are not, like, if you had the second place horse that should have won, you don't get to cash the ticket, and they're not going to take your money back or whatever.
Well, did they invalidate this horse's Kentucky Derby win? Not the books, just did the Derby take the trophy?
I think it's being appealed, right? It's in the appeal process.
Yeah, I don't think the books can award money to anybody else until this thing gets figured out.
Yeah.
But the books, people that won on that horse, Medina, whatever the horse is called, I don't know what the horse's name was, but
something like that.
They can't like demand you pay them the money back, can they?
Yeah, I don't know what you do. I don't know what
already
you do.
spent it.
It's just, I did not hear that excuse. That is a fucking incredible excuse. Honestly, it's so outrageous. It feels like there's a little truth to it. Doesn't it feel it's outrageous enough to like, I can see that.
One thing I wonder
you're just
is
there, right? And there's no bathrooms out there. You just piss. People.
Horses
I grew up around farmers. We just
can
pee outside. Farmers just pee outside. You just pee in the whole. Hey, horse doesn't care. You're all just horses pooping and peeing.
Absolutely. Horses
It's just
doing gallons worth of work. But
it is believable the guy would pee in the hay,
for
right?
sure. But like out of some respect for the horse, maybe you pee somewhere else.
Yeah, the horse is pretty important.
Hey, bro.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah.
Like guys.
My question would be,
what if you had a beer last night? Don't pee in the horse's hay. My
thing would be, how much are you really peeing to like have it sit there and be strong enough to then test positive? How many days before does it sit in the horse? Like if you're going to make that excuse, you would have to back that with like, well, even if that's the case, it would only stay in the horse for 15 hours. Or like,
you have to have footage. Would you have footage of the guy going in there at a certain time? The coming out like doing this with his hands. Do you give
Baffert feels like a little bit of the Baffert feels a little bit like Belichick Ian Villain of the whole horse racing.
Yeah.
Because he's so much better than everyone else. He's by far the most famous guy, but he definitely has some shady shit on his resume.
And this horse came out of nowhere.
Didn't you tell me it was $1,000 buy?
Yeah, like $1,000 or maybe $5,000. It was a very cheap horse
which is not the way it works typically. Right?
No, if you were to give the horse steroids, maybe you would just have this excuse on deck in perpetuity. Like every day before the race, you just always have somebody go in there, say they're sick, have footage of them at the Walgreens buying some cough syrup, have footage of them going in, have footage of them kind of zipping up as they walk out. Like you just set it up. You just have this excuse ready. Like this excuse is going to be so unbelievable that you're going to have to believe it because who would make this thing up? Cough syrup.
I did see an interview.
Witnesses say they did see him coughing the day before.
I did see an interview where Baffert was like, surrounded by reporters, was like, I got the call this morning. Just some bad news. Like bad news? Like this is a career ender, buddy. Like
he said it's cancel culture.
This is bad news. Your horse got fucking caught with something it's not supposed to take. These horses too.
They know between the difference right and wrong, the horses.
Yeah, I know. I just want to hear from the horse.
The horse needs to speak for himself. So, a couple YouTube comments here. Edward says the Cardinals need Lincoln Riley.
I would not leave Oklahoma for the Arizona Cardinals.
What if you got personnel control? What if it wasn't Steve Keim?
I might think about it. Could they offer me $12 million?
What if it wasn't Steve Keim hiring you? What if you got full personnel? The owner hired you.
Yeah, I think you could think about it.
Or you sit around and wait. If I'm going to go, Mike McCarthy's not going to be in Dallas forever. Do I really want to go to Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's more the franchise than like it is. It feels like if he's going to leave, like you go to the Cowboys.
Which is going to be available to him at some point.
Yeah, the Cowboys the Cowboys. To me, just feels like the only job he's leaving for.
He's still got something to prove in college. Still young, not in a rush.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if I'm him, I really want to win a national championship. Like that's just something that would really just validate my collegiate career. To me, if he ever wins a national championship, I would then keep an eye on now it's kind of because he leaves now. The elites in college, if he ever comes back, well, it's a little hollow. It was kind of like the paper champs, like Chip Kelly a little bit. Like one thing, when Nick left to go to the Miami Dolphins, he had won a natty at LSU. And then when he came back to Alabama, Alabama was getting a national championship coach. Now, obviously, if Lincoln failed, everyone would want him. So it wouldn't diminish his, status. But I think as him, like he's at Oklahoma, he's like, we should win a national championship here.
Yeah.
Right? Just like when Nick got to LSU, like we should win a natty. It's hard.
I think it's hard to walk away after you win a championship, though, because think of all the work they've put in. They're a Final Four team, but their defense. If they finally got there, if you were to beat Saban, if you were to beat Ohio State, if you were to beat Dabo, it's like, how do you walk away from that? Look at what these guys are building. You get to that level, and now you can maintain that for several years. I don't know, man.
I do know this. A buddy of mine I went to college with works for a company. They manage Bob Stoops and obviously now Lincoln Riley's finances, and he's been out to Oklahoma. Lincoln's living fucking good. Life in Oklahoma is fantastic. And by far, maybe Clemson has become this, but obviously Dabo had to earn it. Lincoln hasn't won a national championship, but he's definitely earned, he's got, I don't want to say he's on scholarship, but it is probably one of the more stable Power 5 football or basketball jobs in the country, right? Yeah. Oklahoma football.
Yeah, I'd say more stable than Ohio State in that, the external pressure is probably less.
Now, part of it is, who doesn't like Lincoln Riley? Why would you want to, you ain't upgrading, right? But they've been pretty – lucky's a strong word because you get credit for hiring the guy, but Stoops to Lincoln Riley is about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Because look at Florida, Urban, and then it was just Muschamps, and it just kind of was a disaster. It's hard, right? I guess it wasn't. Our guy, McElwain, was fine. They just, didn't like the West Coast vibe. It's like, come on, guys, be open-minded.
Khalil says Justin Fields is going to be the greatest quarterback in Bears history on the YouTube comments. So here's the history.
You're right. Jim McMahon, listen to a little more Steve Young book. He got hurt in college when Steve was there. Steve filled in a couple times. I think he battled some knee injuries.
History of the Bears quarterback, just for fun. Trubisky, Matt Barkley, Cutler. I'm just going to name – I'm not going to name everybody every year, just the name of the guy who got the most starts. Cutler, Kyle Orton, Grossman, Orton, Craig Krenzel, Cordell Stewart, easy to forget, Jim Miller, Cade McNown, Shane Matthews, Eric Kramer, Dave Craig, Eric Kramer, Steve Walsh, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Tomczak, Jim McMahon, Vince Evans, Mike Phipps, Bob Avellini.
Loved Avellini.
Gary Huff.
Oh.
Bobby Douglas. Jack Concannon. Randy Bukic. Billy Wade. Ed Brown. George Blanda. Sid Luckman. So, really since they
started strong.
They started strong. They went from Luckman, and then they had a couple years of Blanda, although I don't know that this was Blanda's
heyday.
Yeah, Blanda played 26 years of professional football. Only 2 of them with the Bears. So they don't. From 49 to 75, we don't talk about it enough.
There are just names that people our age have never seen. But if you just say it, if you just grew up loving sports, you heard your parents say it. If you started listening to sports talk in the 90s, there are just names that when you hear. You just Johnny Bench, George Blanda. I know nothing about anything about these guys besides those guys are just legends. You just say some of these, Sid Luckman, right? You just think of some of those names Tom Seaver. I don't know, lefty, righty, Bench, I know he was a catcher, but some of the former quarterbacks in the 60s, they were kind of spoken about a little bit like the 50s, 60s, and 40s baseball players. You just knew. Some of those guys might not be able to throw a 15-yard out for all we knew. Right? Seriously. Y.A. Tittle. I just heard some of these names. You just I just think about it when I hear it Mickey Mantle. I'm not saying they were as good as Mickey Mantle, but you know what I'm saying? I just envision them in black and white running around taking on Lombardi. When you threw 12 attempts a game, but you should have seen Luckman throw that ball.
It's never. Nobody ever says.
They feel way older, Terry Bradshaw, or even what's his name, the Snake Stabler. Some of the guys in the 70s, they feel dramatically older. Those names and that crew of guys, right? Brian Greasy's dad.
Oh yeah.
Like
Bob.
those guys were playing in the 50 years
You're
ago.
right. Nobody said. People do say like you should have seen Willie Mays swing, or you should have seen Willie Mays run, or you should have seen Mickey Mantle cover ground in the outfield. No one ever's like, oh, you should have seen this guy from the '60s throw, man. Tightest spiral I ever saw. It's like, yeah, because he's throwing a basketball.
But you know what I'm saying? Like the 70s NFL guys, like, Mean Joe Green, Bradshaw, Swan, Stabler, just the Raider guys. Some of, I'm just.
They're always
the famous
mean.
guys.
So the emphasis on the old guys, like, they're mean.
Staubach.
Yeah.
But that crew of guys feels dramatically younger than any, like the Blanda, Sid Luckman, some of the guys that the famous Chiefs coach is always running around coaching up. The Benerick
Len
Award.
Dawson? Oh,
yeah.
Chuck
To me, Len Dawson's like, closer to the older guys than he is like Terry Bradshaw. Because I think he played definitely in the 60s. Even though, like,
I bet he smoked on the sidelines. That's what I know.
I'm pretty sure, like, Ken Stabler was in college in the 60s, and fucking Unitas, Namath. What's Namath? Namath's pretty old. Namath is, like, the sweetest of the old guys.
Namath is 77. So, yeah.
Doesn't Namath feel like the best, or at least most famous, of the crew of guys that might have taken some snaps in the 60s?
Yeah, but even I bet if
when
you talk
was
to
Namath's rookie year?
Namath's rookie year was 65, but I bet if you talk to people who watched football in the 60s, they would say no. Namath was not as good as those other guys.
Well, I've heard that Chris Russo go on tangents about Namath. I think there's the diehards feel he's a little overrated.
50% passer.
Yeah,
and
a lot
he
of picks.
Threw 47 more interceptions than touchdowns.
You get credit for winning, and he has the greatest upset of all time. Didn't he beat the Colts?
Yeah. He was a star.
Yeah. And the picture of him sitting there with, like, Musburger. And he was he was kind of the first playboy in football. In football. Mickey Mantle would tell you, yeah, we've been doing that a long time, buddy.
Roy Boy says Fran Tarkenton was a little badass. I love when you get somebody got draft comp to Tarkenton the other day. Not the other day. Like last year, the year before, maybe it was this year. Maybe it was Zach Wilson. It reminds me a little of Fran Tarkenton.
Wasn't Tarkenton's coach
because he was he was a running guy.
He was the Minnesota Vikings quarterback, correct?
Yeah.
That walked out in the short sleeves.
Minus 8 degrees wind chill that day.
Yeah.
What was that guy's name?
I don't know, but I remember everyone was like, this guy. I mean, he talked
Bud
about
Grant. Bud Grant. Short sleeves, minus 8 wind chill. Maybe it was minus 3 wind chill. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Staubach feels a little bit younger, actually. He just does. And when you see him, he looks like Staubach. Whenever I see him talk or something on an interview, it's like he's like a 70-year-old, super successful business guy.
Yeah, 79. Good job.
Roger 79,
though. Staubach 79.
Staubach's even older than Namath.
Yeah. Maybe lived different lives. I mean, Staubach was a military, Navy man.
That's true.
But,
yeah.
All right.
Good
time. Next pod coming at you Wednesday night. I think 5, right? Draft release.
I always love like 3 to 5. They'll be like sources. Niners, Packers, October 7th. It's just like and people like piecemeal them together, and it'd be like
that's right.
A Mayoko or Biederman will like, so far we have 7 of the 17 dates, and it'll be like you're missing like week 7 through week 12, but you have some of the other dates.
I remember
it's a fun night.
The first year schedule release, I made fun of it. I haven't made fun of it since. Like this is, you know what? This is genius.
Yeah, it's smart.
This is genius.
They clearly realize like, we don't need to waste this thing in April. The draft and free agency enough. Use this thing. This belongs. You could argue like they could do some sort of build up this week. You could even waste it like May in the 20s. Like if you told me it wasn't this week but next week, I'd be like fine with that. Like this to me feels like the right time.
They could do this. The way to do it. Maybe do the schedule release and then do Raiders Niners are playing week 12, but you don't know yet if that's the Monday night game or the Thursday night game or the prime time games don't get announced yet. What you do is you do a live draft between the networks. You do a network draft.
That'd be pretty cool.
And you got
it's clear that clearly happens, right? When they make the schedule.
Yeah.
So Is that the
But
next
apparently the
step?
Week 17 game is not, AFC home games or CBS, NFC home games or Fox usually. Week 17, what Peter wrote is that it's not going to go that way. It's not going to be related necessarily to the league.
But the Week 17 game, like Week 17, aren't all the Week 17
No. Right.
games.
Yeah.
They're just going to be
sorry, I shouldn't say Week 17. I mean the additional games.
But that is correct. Like the Niners could play the Bengals any of the weeks, right?
Yeah.
That could be Week 1 or it could be Week 20. Or
Week
I mean, not 20,
right.
7.
Right. Week 17 or Week 18 is going to have 2 Saturday games. But I think
there's only one bye. That to me is kind of
single
crazy.
bye. Yeah.
I probably
That's
would.
going to be the other part. Where's your bye?
Would you added 2 byes?
I would have.
I wonder what their pushback on that is.
I don't know. Eisen will explain on Wednesday, and then we'll talk about it.
But one thing has been clear with the second bye. It does feel like the NFL is very anti the second bye. Probably, I would guess it has a lot to do with like there then becomes major holes in our television packages, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now you took away a preseason game, you added a regular season game. You haven't changed the number of weeks that you're required, right, for your television product. Either way, it's 20 weeks, 4 plus 16 or 17 plus 3. It's 20 weeks.
I wonder if they would ever be open to doing like a bye where every team gets it off like week 12. Why?
No.
No chance. That's dumb. That sounded like
we're spitballing. This is a safe space.
That was dumb. Roger would be like, "You talk about the NFL for a living?" Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't even know what I was thinking there.
All right, everybody. If you're watching it, like the video. We appreciate it on your way out. Just give it a like, subscribe to it, and we'll be back on Wednesday night. Thanks.
You know what I need to start throwing in? I heard this guy that this YouTube channel I watch on crypto. Hammer the like button is a
hammer the like button.
Hammer the like button.
Hammer the like button.
We need to throw that in.
Yeah. Hammer the like button. We appreciate it. Hammer the button. Later, everybody.